let's get into the major issues that have made waves in the last couple of hours. But before that, joining me this morning in the studio, I have the Deputy Energy Minister in the studio. He's also the MP for the 2nd D constituency, lawyer Andrew Ejapa-Mensah. Good morning.
Morning, Bella.
How are you doing?
By His grace, I'm good. Yourself?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Good,
have you had
good
enough rest in the last few days since the announcement
Well,
of
IMF? I was out of town when the announcement came. I got back in on Monday, and immediately I got in, I had to join the communication team and try and reassure the people of Ghana that, it is what it is. The Ministry of Finance had clearly indicated government stance initially that we were going to find ways to, as it were, deal with the issues that were confronted it rather than going to IMF. Because we all knew the prescriptions that they were going to proffer. And so let's try and raise revenue, burden share. But obviously the e-levy proceeds nothing to write home about. And so it has become imperative that we are nationalistic in our outlook and take a decision that is in the best interest of Ghana.
Okay, we'll discuss that further. And see, we'll go further into details. But also joining us is the ranking member of the Mines and Energy Committee in Parliament. He's also a member of the Finance Committee in Parliament and the MP for Yape Kusogu constituency, Honorable John Abdullahi Jinapor. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good.
You haven't had enough rest either, have you?
Yeah, you do some work, a lot of.
Oh, so it has nothing to do with IMF. You're not thinking for Ghana?
No, I do that as well. I was reading some articles on debt. I was just trying to see the relationship between debt and economic growth and how debt impacts African economies. Fortunately, I'm doing some research on GDP and all those things. So it just ties in. But I'm thinking of doing a paper on debt sustainability and its impact on economic growth for Ghana. Maybe I can get some 30-period data. I'm sure you can do some analysis.
When are you starting that?
I'm supposed to finish something next week. Once I'm done, I'll look at that.
We'll be looking forward to it. We'll be looking forward to it. But even before we go into the conversation about the IMF, this is also tied to the IMF one way or the other, because there have been complaints about the insensitivity of pre-tertiary teachers in the country after they declared strike 2 days ago. But this segment is proudly brought to you by Niche Cocoa and Niche Chocolates. If you haven't tried the chocolate drink yet, well, this is newly introduced. It's very tasty, very healthy, has all the vitamins in there, so you should try. Bobo, you want to try one?
Yes, I would love to try one. I was hoping that you guys were going to make us 1 cup each.
We will. There are plans. I think we have hot water. I think so. Now, do we? Yes, we should. If not, we'll make arrangements.
JJ loves cocoa, you know.
Oh, he does, eh? Well, this is for you. Now, they come in various sizes and packs as well. So we have the bottle, we have the box pack, and we even have what you can mix with hot water as well. So it's very tasty. You should try it. Niche chocolate drink and Niche Cocoa. Anyway, let's get into our conversation. And first up, it's been 2 days since the pre-tertiary teachers went on strike. That's about 240,000 of them across the country. And they are agitating for their COLA, cost of living allowance, 20% of that. The National Labour Commission had indicated that even though their complaints are justified, it was illegal to go on that strike, especially even when the National Labour Commission was not aware of it and had not received an official letter communicating this decision by these 4 teacher unions. So that's UTAG, NAGRAT, CCT, and TAO. In fact, there are other unions that have also supported the request for COLA, and they're also threatening strike as well. But later today, we're expecting some engagements between these teachers and government. But even before that, the Deputy Employment Minister has been speaking, and he sort of painted the picture that these teachers were being insensitive because this is the time when everyone should tighten their belts and look forward to what government may be able to get from the IMF. So how do you go ahead and declare a strike, especially when they had been paid for 9 months during COVID, when schools were out of session? Take a look at what the Deputy Employment Minister had to say. All right, we'll play that shortly. And the president of Gov't had to respond to this. And he said that, of course, you may have given us that money for 9 months. But when we came back to school, we increased our contact hours and we were not compensated for that. So how do you say that we're insensitive? Can we play that video quickly?
Well, let me correct this false impression. We stayed in school without holidays after COVID break. So the 9 months were made up by teachers because for over 2 years, teachers have been teaching without holidays. People should stop this issue of 9 months staying home with pay, because after the COVID situation and schools were recalled, teachers agreed with the Ghana Education Service and we had continuous teaching without break or holidays. So the 9 months thing that political activists are mentioning is absolutely not true. Number two, when you talk about being an inconsiderate worker group, that is far from the truth. Because this worker group, without resources, without teaching materials, with inadequate salaries, having fallen at the lowest end of the salary scale for years, have been turning out very good materials such as you and Matilda in the studio. Therefore, we are very considerate people. People have died in poverty, and we continue to teach.
But Angel,
So please,
you have chosen, Mr. Kabonu, you have chosen to take this action at a time when we have a global crisis. You know about the Russia-Ukraine war. You also know about COVID and how it's dealt a heavy blow to most economies, both developing, developed, and even less developed economies. You've just been insensitive.
Look, Ghana have always been in crisis. Ghana did not start going to crisis this week, or this month, or this year. We have been in economic crisis, and the reason for which workers go on strike is for Ghana government to respond to inadequate salaries. And this is not the first time. Please, let us not bring in tangential issues.
Don't you appreciate that it is because of the difficulties that the government has decided to go for an IMF program?
Because this government has tried its best to try and make sure everybody has life, regardless of the global pandemics. Yes. We have tried, and for me, I have said that they have a legitimate demand. We are going to meet them and discuss it. But let me also say that for some 9 months during the COVID, our teachers were at home because of the pandemic. This government continued to pay them. We continue to pay them. And if today we have a global crisis, only 2 days ago we had an announcement, the president says we must initiate discussions with even the IMF. So if we were even telling you lies, we are even exposed that IMF is coming in to help us salvage a global situation. And just a day or two, you say we should go and give cola. We are meeting them tomorrow, God willing. And the leadership of TUC are all invited. And we will have discussions with them and plead with them to understand that we are not in normal times. We are not in, everybody is affected. You are here today, your child is probably supposed to be in school. So all of you, I'm pleading with you, start begging our teachers so that when we meet them tomorrow, it becomes easy for us.
And that was Honorable Bright Rekubrobe. He is the Deputy Employment Minister, and that's what he had to say. Earlier, you heard Angel Kabonu, the President of Gov't, responding to these concerns that were raised by the Deputy Employment Minister. But I'll start off with you. And this is on the back of what the Deputy Employment Minister said, that for 9 months, these teachers were paid, even though they were not in school. And so he finds it quite problematic that at this point, when we've just gone to the IMF to seek a bailout, they are asking for COLA. Were the teachers being insensitive when they decided to embark on a strike?
Well, even before I deal with that, let me just respond to some of the statements that Johnny made during his presentation, especially with respect to his call on His Excellency the President to, as it were, Nanakasa. Indeed, I heard the Information Minister on Sunday when he appeared on the probe, Joy FM's evening program, indicating that His Excellency the President was going to address the nation this week. It's surprising that he says that the President has addressed everybody else in the world except his people, but concludes by saying that he should organize one more fellow Ghanaians. What it then means is that he himself acknowledges that the President has been speaking to the people of Ghana for the period that he's been president. So it's important that we situate some of these matters in context. Yes, the IMF decision was taken last week, and the Information Minister has indicated that the President was going to address the nation this week, and I'm definite that that is going to happen. It is not the case that His Excellency the President has ignored.
When you say this week, that's too vague. When exactly is he speaking? Should we expect him on Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
I'm not in a position to confirm, but I'm saying that I heard Kojo Oponkroma on Sunday indicate that the President was going to address the good people of this country this week, and I can assure people, especially those who are listening to us and watching us this morning, that His Excellency the President will definitely do so.
Okay, let's go back to the main topic then.
Yeah, sure. So on the teacher strikes, like the Deputy Minister indicated, they have a legitimate case. I mean, I was out in UK last week, and the trains had stopped running. In fact, 2 weeks ago, trains had stopped running because the railway workers were demanding some salary increases as a result of the hardships that they were going through, cost of living having risen, inflation at 40-year highs, and all that. And so if you situate that within our present context where inflation has risen from pre-2022 levels, salary increases haven't gone up as much. Everybody is feeling the pinch of the economic crisis that we find ourselves in today. Then it is legitimate for employees to want their employers to increase their salaries by a certain margin to enable them meet their recurrent expenditure. I guess that the issue then would be as to the timing, okay, especially in view of the fact that there are laws that guides what it is and when it is that you can embark on a strike. And so if you disregard all those rules and just declare strike action, then people are tempted to conclude that you are being, if you like, insensitive. You are taking yourself out of the present situation that we find ourselves in as a country and suggesting that only your interest should be what it is that is taken care of. But I think that we need to make progress. My understanding is that the Ghana Education Service is engaging with the teacher unions today. I would urge that we all keep an open mind, go into the discussions dispassionately, and review all the issues that is at stake. The economic crunch that is sweeping across the world, Ghana's resort to the IMF because the revenue challenges that we are facing, that then is used to fund our development and the wages and salaries that Ghanaian public service employees are demanding. All of that ought to be put in perspective to see where it is that government can make some accommodation if possible, or that the teachers ought to, as it were, bear with the times that we are in and afford some space to the Ministry of Finance and government to resolve the...
Talking about the strike that has been declared by the 4 teacher unions, pre-tertiary teacher unions, so NAGRAT, UTAG, CCT, and TEU. And on the back of that conversation with the Deputy Employment Minister saying that, well, it was quite insensitive for them to even embark on strike just, 2 days after it was announced that government was going to the IMF. But if you listen to the teachers, they say that they started this agitation way before the announcement of the IMF. In fact, as far back as February, they alerted government again that they were going to ask for their COLA and they wanted a 20% increase in their cost of living allowance. Around that same time, the finance minister had made an emphatic statement that there was no way we were going to the IMF. We had to pass the e-levy and that was going to show up our revenue. And so we were in charge of our economy and we could handle things.
Absolutely.
So if you make statements like, well, we've gotten to a point where things are difficult and the teachers should be considerate, they are saying that we started asking you way back when you gave us assurance that you were going to fix the problem. Why are you making it look like all of a sudden we're running?
Is it being suggested that the finance minister said to them that when the e-levy was passed, then their demand of a 20% COLA was going to be met? I don't think so. Okay, it's a different thing saying that I made demands earlier, and so you cannot use the resort to IMF as basis to have any conversation with me. And another thing saying that, well, you said to me that when you pass the e-levy, I'm going to pay you a COLA of 20%. Okay, I'm saying that, yes, we all recall that public sector wages in 2022 went up by only about 4% or so. Okay, question is, and I'm ignorant on this subject matter, whether that factored in all the COLA or it did not, or that regular public sector wage increases is separate from the COLA that they are demanding today. I need to be educated a little bit. Maybe John will be in a position.
Let me just make a correction. So I mentioned UTAG
sure.
instead of NAT. So it's NAT, NAGRAT, CCT, and TAU. Pardon me for that.
No, that's fine. I mean, but you, of course, you qualified it by saying the pre-tertiary. Obviously, UTAG is a tertiary union. So really, but I'm saying that we all know that when the e-levy was proposed, the finance minister clearly indicated the challenges that we're facing with our economy. The call was made then that go to IMF, including one from my own former colleague, a very good friend, Asimi Eboa, whom Johnny referred to earlier. And the finance minister said that, look, we know the prescriptions that the IMF was going to give us. It was going to tell us to tighten our belt, cut down on expenditure, including public sector wages and so on and so forth, and raise revenue. So if we know the prescriptions, then it stands to reason that we ourselves can begin the process of implementing those prescriptions rather than going to the IMF, which then would impose some further additional conditionalities that may not be in the interest of our nation. Okay, and so we're going to try and raise revenue internally by the e-levy implementation. We all know the issues that were associated with the challenges, the if you like, ugly noises that were associated with the passage of the e-levy. So finally, it was passed and commenced implementation in May. The proceeds from there is really nothing to write home about, because a lot of people have, based on the narrative that they were made to understand, have pulled out. Okay, some people have found creative ways of doing transactions through merchants, I understand, which then excludes them from paying that levy. So it's not gained the traction that the finance ministry had initially anticipated. And so if you've gotten to the point where you are not getting the revenue that will enable you to meet your obligations, then you ought to look at alternatives, which then is the IMF. Okay, so I do not see how the timing of when they made their demand, okay, which at the time was not even met. Discussions, we ought to be told whether it kept, taking place or not. But we are where we are, and they've declared the strike today. And
they gave a deadline that by June 30, if nothing is done about COLA, they will make a decision on it.
Well,
so are they not in their right of way to declare a strike then?
It's a democracy.
Whether you're going to the IMF
I agree.
or not.
Strikes are part of the labor agitation regime. It's part of the tools that is within the ambit of every employee to exercise. But I guess that what the Deputy Minister for Employment was saying is that, look, it's not as if you are oblivious of all the issues that is happening across the world. at this time. And so declaring a strike at this time may not be the best option that you should employ. And so, like I said, they've declared a strike. The Labour Commission has issued some directives to both government and the labour unions. Ghana Education Service has responded. They are going to have some engagements today. And I hope that we are able to bring some closure as soon as possible.
Have we been fair to teachers generally? Because, and also, workers in the educational sector? Because TAWU went on strike at the beginning of the year. And they were asked to call it off because negotiations will take place to give them whatever they were asking for. In fact, there were a number of other unions that had also gone on strike around that time. It was in January as well that UTAC had even gone on strike. The Anesthetics Association also went on strike. They were told to call it off, and I'm talking about TAWU, so that they can negotiate with government and deliver on the promises. It's been months and nothing was done about it. And so do they not have, that right to say that, well, yes, we expected that you would address our problems. You didn't address these problems. So we don't care whether it's IMF or not. We're asking and we're making demands and we expect that you meet, our end of the bargain, especially at a point when you've given us just about 4%, 7% increment in our base salary, as against some over 70% of increment in salary for Article 71 office holders.
That's not true. Article 71 office holders, and both of us are within that category. In fact, we haven't increased. Let's even relate it to what was done for the 7th Parliament. I think it was 11% average. Yeah. Okay, where public service workers had, I think, received an average of 12.5 over the 4-year period. We got 11 or 11.5, if I recall. And our terms and conditions our terms and conditions for this 8th Parliament has not been approved. And the call has been made for His Excellency the President to set up the committee as soon as possible. I think that he will respond in due course and do what is needful so that the brouhaha related to Article 71, when their emoluments are approved, is done away with. Because I'm not comfortable, with the kind of utterances that people make with respect to the work that we have offered ourselves to do for our nation. And so that talk that people have received 70% increases and all that is completely unfounded.
But then there was that, when the team came together, they declared that, of course, there would be some 70 or over 70% increment in salaries as against 4%. Was that not what happened?
Who?
Was that not what happened?
No. I'm saying to you that the incremental salaries that we got for the period 2017 to 2020 was 11% or 11.5. I'm certain that it wasn't up to 12% because I recall when we were having the committee of the whole meeting, Honorable Muntaka was insisting that we should get at least the same level as public service workers got, plus an additional 1% to make up for the time value of money loss that we have been occasioned with. But that was rejected. And the 11.5%, I believe, is what we got. And that is the increases that Article 71 office holders across board got. So where the 70% is coming from, I frankly don't know. But I can confirm to you that I did not receive a 70% increase in salary. No, not at all. It never happened.
But this strike that we're seeing with these pre-tertiary institutions, that did not also open the doorway for other unions to also declare strike? Like I mentioned, we've heard from
it is not in doubt
the Union of Nurses and Midwives. They're saying that
the difficulties that people are facing. Because petroleum prices have gone up by more than 100%. Jay. It's a matter of fact. And it's not unique to Ghana. It's a global phenomenon. Okay, inflation is rising. Yes, in our case, more than some of our peers within the sub-region. And so people will feel the brunt. I'm not about to pretend as if I'm an ostrich. And because I go to the market as well, we all are feeling what is happening. And so it's legitimate for people to make demands for increases in salaries. But I'm saying that demand ought necessarily be put within the general economic conditions that the country itself faces. Okay, and to recognize that the impact of COVID and the Russian-Ukraine war has compounded the problem that had already started. And there's no denying. Of course, people make references to the statement that the IMF country rep makes with respect to the challenges that we began to face in 2019, caused by some huge expenditures that government had to make to save the economy. Banking sector and energy sector payments. These are matters of fact. Was reported as below the line items with objections from my friends in the NDC. Okay, that then took our debt to GDP levels beyond what was considered as sustainable. Then COVID hit. Yes, we got some monies to pay for COVID expenditure, but you had revenue shortfalls. That then led to you having to use some of those funds even for budget support and all that. Okay, and so it's a difficult time that we find ourselves in. And so, yes, by all means, let's make the demand, but let's keep the conversation going and see how we can both come to some consensus that relieves people of the suffering that they're going through without necessarily overburdening the public purse as well.
Honorable JJ, have the teachers been insensitive in declaring a strike at this time? I mean, they have complained over time that you're not giving us textbooks even when we're asking for it. It's been over 3 years or so since the new curriculum was introduced. We've been asking for textbooks to teach, and it was just until recently in June that we're told that textbooks were being printed to be distributed to the schools. That aside, we've been asking for, COLA and other conditions of service. All those ones have either been met a little too late or it came with a number of agitations. So at this point, we have no choice than to declare strike. Are they being insensitive, or has government rather been insensitive to the plight of teachers?
Well, I've heard the teachers indicate that they've written several correspondences to government and they haven't even received a response. And so when someone is willing to engage you, willing to communicate and dialogue with you, and you do not respond to their communication, the only way out would be to declare a strike. And so they have a point. They have a legitimate cause for concern. And I'm even surprised that this government cannot print textbooks for 3 years. I mean, that is mind-boggling. That you can go and buy past questions for such whopping amounts. But the textbooks that they need to even answer those so-called past questions, you cannot print textbooks. I mean, that tells you that the system is virtually collapsing and giving way. You see, as we speak today, inflation is more than 30%. And when we talk of inflation, you're normally looking at core inflation and headline inflation. Within the headline inflation, you're looking at food items and then energy. If you look at the inflation basket proper, the highest of them is the food inflation. That is what is leading the inflation chart. And so that puts a lot of pressure on you. The currency has depreciated so much so that the cedi is now virtually in a very difficult situation because the dollar is now $8.2 to the cedi. Like my good friend said, fuel prices have increased by more than 100%. I used to fill my fuel tank with 800 cedi. Now I have to do that with 1,700 cedi. So,
1,700?
Yeah, 1,700. So that should, because even if it's 100%, it's 1,600. So 800 plus 800 is 1,600. So you can imagine the enormity of the situation. Meanwhile, like you said, salaries were increased by 4% last year. This year, it has increased by 7%. And what inflation does is that it eats away your purchasing power. Because inflation is simply the rate at which prices increase. So it's a basket of goods, and they use a CPI, the consumer price index. So prices are increasing by about 30%. And your salary is increasing by 7%. So it means that the purchasing power of the money that you have is greatly impacted. When we got 4% increment, we had a COVID levy which was a tax. We had a financial sector recovery levy, which was a tax. Energy sector recovery levy, which was a tax. Pollution levy, which was a tax. Then there was a reversal of the benchmark values at the port, which shot prices up. And then finally, the almighty e-levy has also come on board. So clearly, the cost of living is just going through the roofs. So I think that government should sit back. And when things are tough, if you're a family head, and things are very tough in the family, the first thing you do is that you don't celebrate festivals. You don't. The second thing you do is that maybe you don't buy Christmas clothing. What you look at is food security and cushion people. So my question is, what is government strategy going forward to cushion people? In this very difficult moment, at least there should be some shock absorbers here and there to ensure that the difficult situation that we are all going through is reduced to the barest minimum. I'm not seeing that unless government officials tells us exactly what they've been doing, especially at the beginning of this year, to deal with the situation. Lecturers have also issued a warning. I'm just told that health workers have also issued a warning. And you see, if they do not work, it reduces productivity. When it reduces productivity, it impacts the growth of the economy, and you're going to have difficult, serious challenges. So these are not interesting times at all. We agree, there's COVID. But what are the other countries doing that Ghana is not doing? What if I'm told just pass the stress test? IMF just finished the Article 4 consultations with them, and they've marked them. Senegal, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda. These are our contemporaries. So I hear people talking about UK. Yes, UK, the inflation might go up, but they have a lot of stipends. They give them a lot of freebies and stuff, so they can weather the storm. How come all these countries are not witnessing the kinds of inflations that we are witnessing? How come their currency is stabilized? Because when COVID or Ukraine war affects the globe, it's the whole globe. It cannot choose Ghana alone and decide that Ghana's currency should perform worse compared to Togo, compared to Cote d'Ivoire, compared to Nigeria, because they are contemporaries. So what are they doing that their currency stabilizes? But once your currency is falling at this rate, it leads to a higher cost of living, because it's virtually like imported inflation kind of. So I think the government should think outside the box. Government must be innovative. And then government must be responsive. I mean, the issue of you pay them 9 months salary and so you don't see why you should pay them or not. This is not the time to make those statements. This is the time to appeal to people's conscience. This is the time to try and calm people so that we can all go through this difficult phase. But if you look at the posturing, it's not the best. I think that government officials, especially the minister and his deputy at employment, it's a very difficult position to hold, given the circumstances that we find ourselves. So your commentary, your demeanor, your posture, and how you carry yourself ought to be reconciliatory, so that even when people are agitated and they are angry, you are able to calm them and deal with the situation. Because we are in very, very difficult moments. And I'm even looking at next year. How are you going to handle salaries? Because you've not increased salaries in a commensurate manner for 2 consecutive years, 2021, 2022. Going into 2023, what will happen? Knowing that you are going into an IMF program. And that's a tough one, given the situation. So we may have to sit back and do expenditure rationalization and put in some shocks in the system in order to ameliorate the difficulty and the suffering that the ordinary Ghanaian worker is going through.
But what kind of shocks exactly? Because, again, these teachers are saying they are not backing down. And all these other labor unions as well. They've been warning since May. I remember May Day, the TUC spoke and they talked about the cost of living allowance for teachers and, you know, labor union workers and all of that. They have been complaining over time. And so if we say that, yes, we're in the IMF or we're going to the IMF, there are other countries in Africa that are also at the IMF. So it's not just those who may not have been hit badly by COVID as well. The likes of Kenya and Cameroon are currently seeking an IMF bailout. And so we're not the only ones.
I'm not sure these countries, you see, there are two things the IMF is doing. They have the Rapid Credit Facility, the RCF. What they said is that because of COVID, we've realized that the global economy is being shaken. So we are allocating monies for all countries. So when you hear that a country is assessing that, Ghana has already assessed ours. We took 1 billion and we've finished it. So countries go to assess it, and then some people misrepresent that and put it as an IMF program. What we are going for is balance of payment support program and macroeconomic stability program. These are the two main things we are going for. Macroeconomic stability, because the macroeconomy is being jilted, is being distorted, and this economy, as I keep saying, is in tatters. So that is what we are going for. It's different from approaching the IMF and saying, I want a loan. A program means that they are coming to virtually help you manage your economy and to put you back on the right trajectory. So, yes, it's unfortunate that we have gotten this level, but something can be done. Something can be done.
Should schools be shut down?
The first thing, in my opinion, is to ensure that we have food security.
Okay.
Let's invest in agriculture. Let's invest in agriculture. There are a lot of silos that they wanted to build. Or what do you call it? That one district, one warehouse.
Yeah,
in my district, it's come to a standstill for more than 2 years now.
There's no warehouse?
They built to a level and left it. And that is the worst thing about governance. Uncompleted projects. When you check the cost and the economic cost to the country, you've invested, you have not completed it, it's hanging. So if we can redirect our priority, maybe you might have to cut certain projects then and deal with food security. Energy is also around the corner. I'm told that PRC wants to increase electricity tariffs around 15th. Today is safe, is that not? So just 9 days around the corner. Can government look at that and see if some cushioning can happen? Because electricity has a big impact. Other than the inflation will skyrocket again. The currency might stabilize as you go in for an IMF program, but it comes with its challenges as well. So these are the issues that I think, because the teachers are looking at the cost of living. I'm a teacher, and maybe after the teacher, I'm not sure they will be able to afford your market. So
When you say by market?
no, I'm talking of going to the market itself. So I'm talking of going to the market itself. The teacher gives money to the wife, maybe just for the hypothetical, 50 cedi every week. The wife is telling the teacher that, look, this 50 cedi can no longer go to the market. I need 100 cedi. Meanwhile, salaries haven't increased. So if food prices had not increased that much, it probably would not lead to that kind of pressure on the families. And normally, food price is key. When I was growing up in the village, anytime my father got a salary, the first thing he did was to buy a bag of rice and come and dump it in the house. At least you can cook something.
Yeah.
So in difficult moments like this, you look at the basic essential needs and try to attend to them. Of course, you might have to defer some projects and see how we can hold this country and make some progress.
Should schools shut down at the moment?
I don't
Especially
think
if
so.
negotiations
I don't
today
think
hit a
so. I
snag?
mean, it's just early days yet.
Okay.
Let's all join to appeal to the teachers. But you see, at least if you can't do anything, be responsive. And that's what the teachers are saying, that we write and we don't even receive that courtesy of a response. We want to meet, we want to engage. Nobody is talking to us. I mean, that shouldn't be a problem. Even if you can't increase their salaries, if you can't give them anything, give them that courtesy, give them that respect, respond to them, and engage them. But if you don't engage them, you don't respond to them, there's no alternative, the door is shut, they would have no choice than to embark on this kind of industrial strikes that we are witnessing.
Lawyer, why that attitude of not engaging them, especially when they send letters to government?
It will be unfortunate if it's true. Okay, that major stakeholders within our educational space have concerns that the table that doesn't receive response. If that's the case, then it's unfortunate, and so I'm not in a position to confirm whether that is indeed the case or not. Of course, I don't have any cause to doubt them either. Okay, but what I can say is that at least we've gotten to where we are. The Ghana Education Service has indicated that they're going to meet the teacher unions today.
Yeah.
I'm saying that let's keep an open mind. dispassionately deal with the issues and appeal to the teachers to look at the entirety of the economic situation and come to some compromise that would of course be in their interests, but at the same time doesn't jeopardize the economy of our country.
Well, let's see how it goes. I mean, later we will apprise you on what the meeting, of course, what came out of that meeting between the pre-tertiary teacher unions and, of course, government. But let's talk about the IMF now.
But
and
you see, even before
yesterday,
we go there, JJ was making a point about cushioning by government. And I've been wondering the nature of cushioning beyond subsidies and or tax reductions, if you like, that government can provide. He himself is very much aware of the conditions that were imposed on government through the IMF when the NDC went for the program in 2015. That led to the removal of subsidies on petroleum products. Okay, and so if that's the regime, of course, leading then to the
I'm sorry, I'm sure we'll be coming to the IMF.
Yes, we will.
So I'll deal with these issues that...
we literally have gone into it anyway.
So then, if you're talking tax reductions, yes, government has introduced new taxes, but there's a government that reduced and or abolished 17 taxes in 2017. Some new ones have come in post that he listed. True. So question is, those tax revenues themselves are not sufficient to meet our expenditure. And so what is the level of cushioning would we be looking at? I mean, I'll be interested to know from them what they think that the cushioning should be and the nature with which the cushioning should take. That's just it before we go to the next subject.
I see. Well, he says he will respond to it. But let's talk about expectations today, because we're meeting the IMF to start negotiations on seeking a bailout. And, of course, yesterday they got into town, and today that discussion will begin. But for you on government side, what are the expectations on the back of responses to the frequently asked questions? Because a lot of Ghanaians have been wondering, is there going to be a freeze on public sector employment? I mean, should free SHS and some major government policies be reviewed? The response says, no, we're not going to review them as long as it doesn't take much, from our revenue to balance these policies as well. Will e-levy be cancelled? We're told, no, it won't, because, of course, IMF will ask us to also show up our revenue. And so that is a very critical part of our government. What are your expectations generally today, moving into this discussion?
Well, my understanding is that this is going to be a process that will take time. Okay, it's not as if the IMF are in today, and so by the end of the week, we would have concluded our negotiations. My understanding, again, is that the IMF is going to do some data collection from government officials, government agencies, assess those information that they gather before the formal conversations begin. But it's important that it starts, so that's what they're going to do today. I would expect that the broad framework of what it is that they would need in terms of the data would be spelled out. I would expect that government's own preliminary expectation, okay, of what it is that it needs would be tabled. The domestically developed program that we need support with would be tabled, and some preliminary discussions will be held today to allow them the space to engage with the agencies that they would engage with, gather all the data that they need. I'm not sure that that will be too much of a difficulty, because the World Bank itself and the IMF are already present here in Ghana, and they have ample data on what it is that is happening in our economy already. They may need some updates, I don't know, but if that is what it is, then of course that information will be made available to them, and then the process will start. Typically, from what we've seen in the past, between 3, 4 to up to 7 months is some reasonable time that one would expect for any conversation to be held, concluded, for the IMF board to then approve whatever policy support that we need. So I think it's early days yet. Government is formulating its own agenda that will have the conversations with the IMF. And I believe that in the fullness of time, we'll know what it is that would be entailed in the program.
Did we wait a little too long to go to the IMF? Because as far back as 2021 was when we were told that there was a need to go back to IMF.
Bella,
in fact,
how
2019,
late is late and how early
predicted
is early?
that we might have to go to the IMF.
Well, people have predicted that we may have to go to the IMF. But if you look at the IMF's own documents, okay, with respect to the program that Ghana went through in 2015, which we exited in 2019. Okay, this statement was issued in May 2019. And if you permit me, I'll read in part. It gives some history. Ghana has been hailed as one of sub-Saharan Africa's success stories. It was the first to free itself from colonial rule in 1957. It built a stable democracy in the 90s, overcoming decades of political upheaval. A thriving economy fueled by export of cocoa, gold, and more recently oil helped cut the poverty rate from 53% in 1991 to 21% in 2012. But by 2015, Ghana's economy was in trouble, hobbled by widening current account and budget deficit, rampant inflation, and a depreciating currency. Credit dried up as interest rates rose and banks' bad loans piled up. At the root of Ghana's woes was out of control government spending, largely to pay for salaries of an overgrown civil service. Okay, so the outcome, so they did a program in early 2015 for 980 million to restore debt sustainability, strengthen monetary policy, clean up the banking system. Ghana's economy is on the mend. The trade and budget deficits are narrowing. The pace of economic growth is poised to rise to 8.8% in 2019 from 2.2% in 2015. The inflation rate is projected to fall to 8% from almost 90%. Cuts to wasteful spending made room for much needed social services such as free secondary education. For Ghana's 28 million people, it all adds up to higher incomes, better job opportunities, and more purchasing power. Still, Ghana remains largely reliant on foreign financing, exposing it to swings in investor sentiment. Maintaining fiscal discipline will also be a challenge. This is May 2019, where the IMF itself indicated that Ghana's economy was on the mend. We had successfully exited the program that was started in 2015. Indeed, so fast forward 2020, it was within this period that the banking sector cleaned up and all the things took place. Fast forward 2020, then COVID hit. That had a significant impact on our economy. In 2021, we had commenced the process of recovery. We saw the GDP growth rate in the fourth quarter of 2021. Okay? So, if people suggest that go to IMF at the time, when clearly government policy was working, albeit with some challenges that a program had been rolled out to deal with, I don't know how anybody would blame government for having faith in itself that it was going to be able to deal with the issues as has been demonstrated at the time. Then, of course, in 2022, we all saw the e-levy and what it is that was associated with. And then the Russian-Ukraine crisis hit. If you look at the World Economic Outlook that was published by IMF itself in April of 2022, it tells you quite clearly what the impact of that war has done to the global economy. And so if what we expected to generate the revenue is not generating the revenue to meet the expenditure that the good people of Ghana have approved for government to provide to meet their own expectations, then it stands to reason that at this time may be the time that you may have to take a step back, evaluate the entirety of all the programs that you rolled out, and to say that, look, we think that because of the non-performance of the e-levy and the impact on the fiscals, this is the time that we ought to go to the IMF. I fail to see how anybody would say that we are late. So at what time should we have gone? Okay, so I think that this is a decision that government has taken, having evaluated all the issues, considered all its options. When the finance minister was speaking, and I was with him on one of the engagements that he did on the
e-levy,
and he was categorical, okay, because he believed in the policy that was being rolled out, said that it's underperformed.
But there were predictions that there was a likelihood that the e-levy was not even going to generate as much. It took us, a number of months to even get the e-levy passed. And so even that government reduced its revenue expectation for e-levy to about 4.5 billion or so. And so we knew that it wasn't going to generate as much as expected. At that point, did we not know that it was time to maybe bite the bullet and just go to the IMF? Would it not have saved us
in any event,
a lot?
That's 3 months ago, right?
Would it not have saved us at least to a certain level?
But that's 3 months
Would
ago.
it have made any difference?
I'm not in a position to say, but I'm saying that that's only 3 months ago. And so if within the 3 months, you're trying to develop programs that are mirrored, having regard to your past experience of what it is that the IMF prescriptions are going to be anyway, okay, without increasing the debt. Because bear in mind that the IMF program, yes, the interest rate may be lower than when you go commercial. It's still a debt. So if government took a position that, look, hold on, our debt burden itself is high because of all these expenditures that we've had to incur over the past 3 years. Let us raise the revenue internally, burden share, and make sure that we bring the debt under control. Yes, whilst we cut expenditure, work on wastage through the digitalization agenda and all that is taking place, that has seen significant revenue increases in foreign affairs, passport issuance, and the like. Then you are clear in your mind that if that program is successful, if the digitalization agenda, which today has crystallized in integrating our bank accounts with our telephone numbers and everything, is all put in place, with our tax identification numbers being our Ghana card and all that, you see that a clear plan to increase the revenue stock is already in place. And so why don't we, as a proud nation, to use the words of the finance minister, take the bull by the horn and work this out ourselves? Yes, we are where we are. The e-levy, all the bad mouthing and the opposition, and of course, people naturally responded and have tried to find ways to move away from using that convenient facility that government was asking you to make a contribution. Okay, and so that's the outcome of where we are now. And I think that the timing, if that is what government has decided to do, we can only proffer some support to ensure that we save the economy of Ghana for our people.
I mean, we should know that tax avoidance is not illegal. It is tax evasion.
No, I haven't said so.
Is illegal.
No, but
by the
of
way.
course, I haven't said that people finding ways to circumvent it is illegal. No, but that's obviously what it is. And all the exemptions. Is that?
To circumvent e-levy.
If
they find way. I don't know, but I'm told that because when you do transfers through merchants, right, the merchants don't get to pay e-levy. People do the
It's not
transfer.
just that. It's not just that. Last week, we have a transportation business. We haul clinker for the cement factory in Bupe. And some people came to me and said they wanted to explain something to me. And they claimed that when they tried to transfer money through the banks, they were being charged 1.5% on whatever amount they were sending. So people now go to the bank physically to withdraw the money and then go to the next bank and pay the money into whoever's account they intended transferring the money to. So that e-levy itself is a disincentive. So if you go to the banks today, the banks are full. The banks are full. So let's be careful the kinds of policies we come. We might have a good intention. We might thought that is good. But when you implement it and you realize that, look, it's not working, you should be humble enough to concede that, look, we had all good intentions, but it looks like the implementation has a challenge. Let's tweak it or let's revise it.
Let's tweak or revise, not cancel, because it is one of the responses that government gave, saying that we're not going to cancel the e-levy, because definitely if we're going to the IMF and they agree to give us a bailout, one of the things they'll be looking at is how we can also internally generate revenue, and e-levy is one of them. And so there's no way government is going to cancel that, even though Ghanaians are saying we're not ready to pay e-levy.
We have promised that we'll cancel it, because like you are saying, you're not even getting the revenues from it. Meanwhile, it's negatively impacting business, because it's a choice. The person decides that he will not transfer the money through the bank. He will go and withdraw the money. And anytime you move cash around, it has a cost element to government. You want a cashless system. You want to move less cash. And when you do those transfers, the banks also make money. And the banks pay corporate tax as they make profit. So if because of e-levy, no one is using the fintech, that's the technological side of the finance, and they are not also doing your e-levy, then you are losing from both sides. So we have given a clear indication that we would cancel it. And if there's anything to demonstrate or compelling reason why it should be cancelled, the results are showing. He wanted 6 billion, and from what Gov't, a man who communicates for you people, says, you're not even getting 10%. So it's not worth it. So if you look at the administrative cost, and I have seen the administrative cost, which is about 400 million, and you are getting 10%, which is 600, and you spend over 400 million for the administrative cost, you are left with 200. What are you getting? And that 400 is even the cost for monitoring, or is it a platform? So if about 90% of what you are getting goes into the cost of getting it, in taxation, you never go taxing something that you spend more to collect that tax, unless there is another benefit somewhere, because in economics, it's not just about financial benefit or accounting benefits.
Where is this 400 million?
It's in the budget. Do you remember the cost? Oh, it's in the budget.
Even
you know, we had a debate.
240, not 400.
Oh, let me check for you.
Yeah,
but even 200.
check. But
let's even take it 200.
But subsequently, when the finance minister came,
yes,
there was clear indication that that third party should not be used.
Yeah, so they said they were moving it now to GRA.
So GRA is the
so GRA will bear the cost.
They have their own internal mechanism.
So if they had their own internal mechanism, why then do you want to
allow JJ to speak?
If they had their own internal mechanism to collect e-levy effectively,
to collect taxes.
No, you say they have their own internal. We're talking of e-levy. Don't broaden it. We're talking of e-levy, which runs on a certain platform, such that you can monitor, you can do the collections and account for sale. GRA, if they had that robust system to do that, you wouldn't be allocating whatever amount we are talking of for that purpose. But let me deal with the IMF issue proper, because that is the whole thing we are discussing. You asked that what can we do and all that. I talked about agriculture. For instance, if our government, once I knew the Ukraine war started, I'll be looking for more equipment like tractors and farm implements to deploy. If you are doing it, I'll scale it up. Because, like you said, fertilizer is going to be a problem. So I'll then begin to engage more with the Ministry of Agri, especially the Extension Service, to quickly train farmers on alternatives to the normal chemical fertilizers, maybe compost and all those things. Then I would also look at the buffer stock. Buffer stock is complaining that they don't have money. They've been complaining. Can we beef up buffer stock to buy more of the produce during harvesting? Because we are not yet harvesting. We'll be harvesting around September to November. So we still have some time. And in Ghana, about 30% of post-harvest losses is a big issue. Can we reduce that? Can you try and complete some of these silos that are available? At least you might not be able to resolve all the problems. But these are practical, straightforward, pragmatic measures that I don't think that the IMF would be against food security. Because the IMF is also conscious of national security. So things that you would do in order to stabilize your democracy and hold things, I'm not sure that the IMF will be much against that. So what would the IMF do? When the IMF sits with you, the first thing they look at is your source of revenue. And if you look at Ghana's revenue, next year, I think that the highest we can do is 100 billion total revenue. Because e-levy is not performing. So, and even as at the first quarter, the revenues we got in this year could not even service our debt.
Yeah.
So if you have 100 billion, and I've just looked at the budget, I've looked at the projection for 2023. If you take interest and amortization, it's about 50 billion. That one, IMF will not compromise on that at all. Because what they want is fiscal discipline. And in economic management, you use two tools. You use the fiscal tool and the monetary tool. So the fiscal discipline will mean that as for your interests and principal, you must pay that 50. Then I've looked at salaries. The workers are even asking for increment. From a conservative point of view, you might be paying about minimum. That's even if you don't increase the salary, 35 billion. So if you add 35 to 50, that's 85 billion. You're left with 15 billion. Of this 15 billion, this Assembly Common Fund is automatic. ESLA is automatic, because it's a loan. Get Fund is automatic, it's a loan. So, and the other statutory payments. So these 15 cannot even pay the statutory payments. Meanwhile, you have what you call flagship program. Those things that they say they cannot cancel. The free senior is also 9 billion. So normally what the IMF would do is that when you take debt servicing and you take wages and salaries, the rest of it, what do we do? That is it. The reality is before you. Okay, where do we cut? Can you tell them that's for your flagship program, you won't cut it? Well, if you don't cut your flagship program, it means that Get Fund won't get money. It means that NHI won't get money. It means that district assemblies will not get money to run the assemblies. So this issue of you people beginning to promise that for your so-called programs that you promised, you won't touch them. Be very, very careful. I thought that you would rather be managing expectation. From what they are doing, they should be very, very, very careful.
They are not managing expectations?
No. Because if you're telling us, oh, as for your free SHS, you won't touch it. 1D, 1F, you won't touch it. These things that the populist things that you talked about, you will not touch them. When you know that you don't have the money. In 2019, we had to borrow 2.2 billion to pay for free SHS. Can you keep borrowing to pay for free SHS?
Well, they also did mention that there will be some additional taxes that may be considered moving forward.
Oh, they want to bring more taxes?
Well, they said additionally there will be some taxes in response to the questions that were asked. And the e-levy, they said that we'll cancel e-levy, but then there might be some additional taxes that we'll be considering.
Whoa, now we're in trouble. Now we're in trouble. Look at the teachers. Everybody's complaining that, look, the taxes is too much now. That you are killing us. That things are difficult. And you want to bring more taxes. On what?
They haven't stated specifically. They're saying that those are some of the things they might consider.
JJ.
In this difficult moment.
What exactly should be done with free SHS? Should they review it or put it on hold? What exactly do you think should be done?
Oh, they know better. All we are saying is that you cannot be borrowing from Eurobond. If you look at Eurobond borrowing, President Akufo-Addo has borrowed over $11 billion. President Mahama has borrowed just over $3 billion. Look at where those monies went to. President Mahama spent more than 50% of that amount in capital expenditure. And when you are growing an economy, you must invest in capital projects, because that is what anchors your economy. Every basic economic student knows that right from the Solo model, Swan model, all those growth models is normally labor capital and technology augmenting. So capital is so important. But President Akufo-Addo, if you look at where he spent the money, on goods and services, when you do that, you would see an initial growth in GDP. Because our GDP measurement is basically based on the expenditure approach. So as you spend more, you capture that in monetary terms of value, and you see a higher GDP. But that GDP will not generate revenue. So after a period, then it begins to bite you. And that's what we are witnessing. Debt servicing was 10 billion when they took office. Now it's over 40 billion. And debt servicing as a ratio to your tax revenue is now in red. It's in red. So there's a huge disconnect between the real issues on the ground the real fundamentals, and what you are presenting in the books. GDP does not pay your debt. The size of your GDP matters not when it comes to paying debt. It's the revenue that GDP is able to generate. You have a very big farm, say 10 acres, and yet you produce 10 bags of rice. I have 5 acres, but because of the agronomical practices I'm doing, I generate like 20 bags. Your farm is bigger than mine, but I'm doing better than you. So this issue of GDP thing, put it aside. What is that GDP generating for you? How much are you generating? And what are you able to do with the amount you even generate? In terms of critical investment and expenditure, it's good if you want to pay people's school fees. It's good if you want to do 1 million per constituency and all that. But it's very important to invest in critical sectors, like the gas processing plant.
Okay.
JJ, you guys keep talking about investing in critical sectors, as if to say this government is not investing in critical
So tell us, that's why you are here.
But you see,
I'm giving examples of what we did.
Look, you can
also tell us the factories
Let
that
him tell us.
you and I are
if you're going to review free SHS
you and
at
I
all.
are in no, the free SHS, you see, the talk of cutting.
I haven't said so.
No, wait. The free SHS program was implemented when we were in an IMF program. Or you forgotten? In 2017, when the free SHS was rolled out, we were actually in an IMF program that had been started by your government. Yet, we rolled out free SHS.
So
what makes you think that? So if the finance minister says that this new program that we are going into would not lead to a cancellation of the free SHS, you are saying that it's what?
Should we review it at least?
I don't. You see, I'm not in a position to say.
Should we review?
Oh, of course. Suggestions have been made about review and all that. I don't have a difficulty.
Okay.
But I'm saying that it is not out of place for government to continue with this program because it already started it when we were in an IMF program.
Okay.
So I know you're winding up. You see, the problem we've had, and where they find the difficulty is that the MPP, and you are witness, made it look like once you go into an IMF program, you are so incompetent, you've lost it. Even last week, their deputy finance minister, John Kuma, was insisting that as for an IMF program, they are better managers of the economy, so they will never go into an IMF program. That's what they said.
He says it's
if it's a matter of fact, then where are you going? You say that you are better managers, you won't go to IMF.
You see,
but anyway, we have
the point that I wanted to make on the investing in critical sectors of the economy. You and I sit in parliament and approve all the facilities that government contracts. And you know the purpose.
Tell me the project. I've mentioned mine.
Then listen when I start, who finish it?
Thank you so much, gentlemen,
when I
for
start
joining me this morning. Lawyer Andrew Ejapameta, the Deputy Minister for Energy and also the MP for the Sekondi constituency. Also, we have in the studios MP for Yape Kusogu constituency and also the ranking member on the Mines and Energy Committee in Parliament and a member of the Finance Committee in Parliament as well, Honorable John Abdullahi Jinapo. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And this segment...
I'm also a member of committees in Parliament.
But I mentioned every other thing. This segment has been brought to you proudly by Niche Chocolates and Niche Cocoa. Give it a try and let us know what you think. You tried it. What do you think? Was it good?
It's very good.
You liked it?
And I know Niche. So
yeah.
Made in Ghana.
100% made in Ghana. Niche, yes. It's Niche. So they have Niche chocolate.
Yeah.
And they also have the Niche cocoa.
I know my wife is watching, madam.
Variety.
Do the needful.
We'll give you some. We'll give you some.
So you don't go shopping.
Go sample it.
To the market.
Yes, remember to
Once
try some Niche chocolate.
So you can buy some
and tell us what you think.
Affairs.
Absolutely. You will love it. Big thank you going out to Dress Right for my jacket this morning. We'll be back to talk some more. But today, we have a colloquium that is taking place from 9 a.m. Right here at the Executive Theatre. And we'll be talking about fighting inflation in Ghana. And so we'll give you more details before the start of that program. Keep watching. We will be right back.